Radhe Radhe, welcome to this recap video that Mummy and I are recording on 18th June 2022 as part of the session we delivered for the JKYog International Festival of Yoga 2022.
Radhe Radhe.
I'll go ahead and share my screen and just quickly walk us through some content we covered. We had this topic, this mysterious topic that looks like ଈQueue in yoga. Some symbol perhaps on top, maybe it's a dot. I personally wasn't really sure, but I did ask Mummy about what it entails. And I mentioned, do we need to look at dashes or lines, mind our P's and Q's, Q here, the long word here, or is it something to do with an ଈQueue test? So Mummy, can you help us out here?
Well, so Gagan, you asked me all these questions, and what did I say? That we will continue our journey and we'll do the first 3 verses and slowly it will all be revealed. So let's see those 3 verses.
Okay, sure, I can do that. So first one was chapter 2, verse 48 with the catchphrase or slogan, so you thought yoga is physical exercise. In this one, we see that there is a very conclusive definition that Sri Krishna provides right after the very famous and popular chapter 2, verse 47. Here talking about being steadfast in the performance of one's duty and abandoning attachment to success and failure, one of many pairs of examples of dualities in life. So the definition given is that that aspect or attribute known as equanimity is yoga. Again, building up from chapter 2, verse 47, we get an added set of examples about working, putting in our best efforts, but leaving the results and the fruits for the enjoyment and pleasure of Sri Krishna. Focus on the effort, not on the rewards. So that is chapter 2, verse 48. We then saw chapter 4, verse 22, catchphrase, singular approach to dualities. So again, going back to dualities, here in chapter 4, verse 22, we saw a few more examples. And from Sri Krishna, we saw a new word being equipoised. Again, the duality of success and failure. So this is for karma yogis not being bound by their actions, even while they perform all kinds of activities. We saw several examples in life and nature of dualities, even the one about the Leela of Lord Ram. And again, the emphasis placed is on us being tolerant and rising above these ups and downs. In fact, in chapter 2, verse 48, there was a beautiful word used called vicissitudes, the ups and downs of life. Here again, we build upon that. We don't want to control the waves of the ocean or the ocean of life. Go ahead and just do your duty. Everything else, the results, the outcomes are again for the enjoyment of God. And also, whatever happens is by the grace of God, the energy that he has supplied to us, and the outcomes are also the will of God. So that was chapter 4, verse 22. And then we saw chapter 6, verse 29, a literally sweet verse talking about like a kid in a candy store. We learned about how different kinds of sweets around Diwali were prepared back in the day in India. Mummy helped us explain that, and I learned about it as well. And in this situation, we see the word innocuousness just about to come up on the screen, that parents smile at the innocuousness of their children, how the children try to grab the sweet in the form of a shape or size or animal or object that appeals to them without realizing that really they're all the same in terms of taste and flavor. Therefore, that analogy is used by Swamiji in this commentary to help us understand Sri Krishna's guidance in this verse, that God is in all living beings. So with that equal vision, samadarshinaha, looking at everybody with that equal vision and recognizing God seated in everybody's heart. In that context, the example given also is from the sun. Just as the sun illuminates everything from one spot, God is that ingredient of all the recipes for each of us. God provides energies, manifests himself in each of us, and we hopefully, as we progress, will recognize God in all living beings. And likewise, they recognize God seated in each of us. Well, Mummy, again, we've talked about 3 verses. I still don't understand, perhaps, or at least in the session, I didn't understand how that pertained or related to the title of today's talk.
So Gagan, basically what we did, this is IQ, but you see there is an accent on top of I. So what is this? We took it from English transliteration. When we write Sanskrit in English transliteration, and the sound is longer one, which is called Dirgha Swar. Dirgha Swar means this is called E. And then it becomes EQ. And now I'm going to show you from those 3 verses where we got EQ. Look at the first verse, verse number 48 from chapter 2. Krishna is saying, such equanimity is called yoga. When you abandon attachment and you are same in success or failure, in happiness or sorrow, that term, that situation of your heart, that is called equanimity in yoga. So basically in this yoga festival, we have been trying to learn what is yoga. Yoga is not asana. Yoga is these 3 things. First is equanimity. Let's look at the second word, which we found in verse number 22 of chapter 4. Here Krishna is saying, being equipoised in success and failure. Again, you have to learn to be equipoised. Again, in the sameness, that you don't get dwindled by the dualities of life. Don't have envy, because in this world, we are being troubled and bothered by so many different situations in our life when we are dealing with human beings. And the situation of our mind can get dwindled very fast. But Krishna is saying, stay equipoised. Now let's move to the third verse, that is verse number 29 of chapter 6. What is Krishna saying here? Krishna says, you become a true yogi only when your consciousness is united with God. And how is it united? When you start seeing everybody with an equal eye. So we need to have equal vision. So this is how we have come to these 3 words, IQ in yoga, and this is EQ in yoga. And the first word is equal vision, equipoise, and equanimity. These 3 are very important, and that is the crux of Bhagavad Gita. This is the wisdom we need to have in our life. Now, how do we implement this? How do we apply these in our day-to-day practical situations? So for those, we chose verse number 13 and 14 of chapter 12. So verse number 13, the catchphrase is free yet dear. And verse number 14, the catchphrase is firm and steady. So Krishna has given us how many? 10 points?
Yes.
Krishna has given us 10 points that if we develop those qualities in us, that is when we will become a true devotee, and that is when we will become very dear to Krishna. So Gagan, can you tell me what are these qualities that we have to develop in ourselves?
Absolutely. Shri Krishna says being free from malice toward all living beings, so not having hatred toward them, because again, God is in each of us. So if you have envy or hatred towards another living being, you're indirectly perhaps also showing hatred toward God. We certainly want to stay away from that. Next, of course, is being friendly and compassionate, just being kind and considerate to everyone around us. Free from attachment. We saw the word attachment earlier. in this case, material possessions, and that pride of I and doership, free from the attachment and egotism. Kartritva-abhiman, as we mentioned, as a brief reminder from chapter 2, verse 47. Next up, the word we learned, Mummy, as you explained, equipoised, balanced, in equilibrium, in happiness and distress, as well as also in other pairs of ups and downs that we see in life. Next up is being ever forgiving. Again, not having those bad thoughts towards others, not having thoughts of punishing people, just being forgiving always. Satisfaction, ever contented, santushtaha, also from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, being satisfied with what we have, because as we said earlier, whatever we get, those fruits and rewards are for the enjoyment of God. And they're also based on the will of God and the grace of God. So being satisfied and contented is essential for getting ahead in this or along this path of yoga. And of course, as Sri Krishna says, being dear to him. Next up is being steadily with Sri Krishna, united with him in devotion, self-controlled, kind of having detachment from the world. Ninth, being firm in one's conviction. So this quality of determination requires a resolute intellect. And finally, again, dedicated to Sri Krishna in mind and intellect. So with all these attributes and qualities, we mentioned that there are 10 of them. Think of them as 10 steps or 10 attributes. Take your time to develop them. With all of that, we become dear to Sri Krishna.
Yeah, very well said, Gagan. Thank you so much. And so Krishna has given us clear-cut formula here. First, he says that you should be equanimous, you should be equipoised, and you should have equal vision. And now Krishna has given 10 points to us. These 10 qualities we need to develop in ourselves so that we become very dear to Krishna. With that, I think we end our session here. This is a short recap of our session which we conducted today in the International Festival of Yoga. It gives you the glimpses of that session.
Yes, thank you, Mummy. Once again, that was not in fact I, but EQ, as you explained to us. EQ in yoga, words beginning with the letters E and Q, equal, equipoise, and equanimity. And if you are hopefully interested in learning more, we did mention that there are new series of Bhagavad Gita classes starting in July, right after the Blissful Family Camp that is coming up at the Radha Krishna Temple in Allen, Texas. So Bhagavad Gita study, we will be continuing now, starting with chapter 6 from Sunday, 3rd July, 2022. Bhagavad Gita recitation that Mommy conducts, that's on Fridays. So chapter 8, starting from Friday, 1st July, 2022. And we are literally in the early stages of chapter 1 with our hybrid in-person at Radha Krishna Temple and online class for Bhagavad Gita recitation and study. Chapter 1 on Saturdays, that is continuing. And again, we will pick up from Saturday, 2nd July, 2022. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact the organizers and hopefully get in touch with us. Look out for announcements. But again, thank you for your participation and attendance in our session at the JKYog International Festival of Yoga 2022. We hope you can enjoy all the other offerings too. Until then, Radhe Radhe. Thank you.
Radhe Radhe. Thanks.